So picking up where we left off at here, folks. I was just talking about, moving back to the ranch in whatever, 2013, 2014 kind of range. My mom had cancer, and wasn't the easiest decision in the world. Up to that point, my mom has spent essentially not even essentially, like all of my adult life betraying / not living up to what she's promised or what she said, not upholding any sort of, not upholding any sort of promise to do right. That's always just been a really big challenge for my mom, because she doesn't answer to anybody, and she's kind of a rare person that way. Once my dad was murdered, there's just nobody to answer to. And so, unfortunately for my mom, she was always kind of delighted in that. I call it sometimes the or what mentality. But, so, in 2013, when she had cancer and asked me to move back, it's a difficult choice, but at the same time, I think a lot of people will understand what I'm saying when I say that, whether it's people in your immediate family or people you're close to for whatever reason over the years and decades, you can either wait for that person to, it's not so much apologize as much as it is like say, like, okay, just want you to know, I'm done doing ABC and XYZ fucking horrendous shit that, and you don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's just funny, like, thinking, if you've had that happen, and who hasn't had that happen in their lives to some extent, it can be comical, like imagining that person sort of saying, okay, I just want you to know, I realize how fucking horrendous that was for you, and how terrifying it was, and I just want you to know I'm done with that reprehensible shit, and here's how you know that, here's the safeguards in place. It's like totally absurd, right? Here's the safeguards in place to make sure that, I can be held accountable. Like, you can wait for that. Whatever. 10 billion, trillion, zillion, gazillion, Googleplex, zillion years for that to happen, and still probably not have it come to fruition. You can wait for that. Or you can just, not hold a grudge and sort of set the example. Yeah, show the example, set the example. Not sort of just taking the idea of whether somebody deserves it out of the whole idea of being deserved out of the equation, and just make it about how you represent yourself. And maybe I approached it this way, like maybe somebody needed me to show them what, forgiveness and, compassion and generosity and sort of goodwill in that situation was about. And I approached it that way, and it just hasn't worked out, to say the least. When we get into some of the stuff that I faced in the last, 6 months in particular, it's like so heavy that I don't even know how I'm going to get through it. It's like I'm not a spy, I'm not like, I don't even like own weapons, and for me to be tasked with like getting out of these horrendous situations, nobody should have to go through this. Some of the shit that I've had to go through. To say that it's a miracle that I'm still alive at this moment is truly 100%, like 50 times over, the biggest miracle on earth. I don't even know how I'm still alive. But yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna gloss over some really heavy shit that happened in the 2010s year to get to how scary this situation is now. It has been for a while, and I guess it's worth saying that when somebody's involved in kind of and my mom has other scams and frauds that aren't necessarily insurance related, but one of the big things she does is she is a pretty accomplished forger. Yeah, and it's not just my signature. My signature, of course, tends to be the number one thing on the agenda. And you have to appreciate how things like this work. Is that, you see, I'm a single person, right? And I'm not doing these things, or I'm not doing a part of anything nefarious. So if my mom is out there on my, like using my signature to do God knows what, well, I'm not going to know about it. In other words, I'm not going to have a chance, you don't even have the chance to deny or correct the record. And that's a big part of of ugly situations like this, is that they're out there doing things in your name, but you never know about it until you get lucky or lucky, I should say, in quotations. So that's something to keep in mind big time. God. So another thing is, at a certain point, the reason why I take off from the ranch is it's not enough to just metaphorically and idealistically disagree or whatever, be appalled by, in this instance, what my mom continues to be a part of and and wants to be a part of. She just gets off on a lot of that, like sort of maintaining this sort of public persona that people will be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Lydia do this. She just seems so this and that. Like, she really gets off on that type of thing while being able to commit some serious atrocities. And so that's just her thing. And so at a certain point, me leaving geographically is about doing literally everything I can to distance myself from this kind of stuff, and thinking, apparently erroneously, that to disagree or to distance yourself idealistically and metaphorically and geographically, well, that would certainly be enough, right? I mean, what else can you do? Yeah, you would think that would be enough, but it hasn't been. So, I'm trying to figure out where to begin this at. Basically, to hook up the whole thing about Tommy and my mom and Tommy link up on this idea of the life insurance fraud. And it's, yeah, I can't say exactly when it started with them, but it's not hypothetical, because basically in 2020, somewhere in 2020, 2021, Tommy, I had hit the road to get away from some serious ugliness. Like, I had 2 home invasions in Pistol River from the same guy, okay, armed guy who knew that my my sliding screen door would be open at a certain time. My mom's the only person who knows that, and quite legitimately, like, almost shot me to death in like Sherry and Jeff Kemp's rental there out front there. Just would have shot me to death if I hadn't luckily been standing out there looking out the window when this guy showed up, which is truly amazing. So I hit the road at that point, or sometime after that. And then in 2000, I think it's 2021-ish. I don't know, 2020 December, 2021 beginning of there, somewhere in there. I'm in LA and meeting Tommy, but something's not right. Tommy was saying that he was going to get me I was looking for a stable place to live, like stable meaning like person who doesn't want to murder me, like for real. I know it's not meant to be a joke. It really isn't. And it was just really strange because if you know Tommy, he's, I don't know, I don't want to say greedy, like, I guess ambitious with money is one way to put it, but it seems like he's gotten like more and more bottom line-ish. How do you put it? Like, when a certain amount of money is at stake, that it doesn't sort of matter what you have to do or who has to go through what for him to get it, type thing. Whether that's greed, a portion of it's greed, I don't know. I don't want to just like leave it at that, but it just seemed like he said that he had a guy that was willing to rent out his house with me, or to me, and live in the house simultaneously. And it was just the type of thing where, Tommy just doesn't do that kind of stuff. He doesn't like work on making sure that you're okay with a living situation. Like he wouldn't arrange that type of thing. And so I approached it really cautiously, thank God. And ultimately what happens is that a dinner is arranged for me to meet him and Jonas, and it's just dripping with all kinds of alarm red flags that has me really cautious about what's going on here. And at that point, I know that my mom, I'm essentially, going around the country avoiding my mom. I have, like, the cat's out of the bag, I guess is the best way to put it, on the whole life insurance fraud. I know my mom wants to find a way to, to basically profit from my demise, from my death. Now's the point where I should have said this earlier, to describe how exactly the life insurance fraud works. This is probably like, maybe the main part of these two videos. So the way it works, and I didn't know any of this either. I had to sort of work it out, in details from my mom and Rob Cudmore, who, needless to say, was working with my mom. It's about isolation. So obviously, if somebody wants to commit life insurance fraud, well, it's not just the fact that they need somebody to die to collect. They don't want to have to pay the premiums. So, okay, like I'm 40, I'm 40 and my mom's 70 when this started. I'm healthy. I'm not going to die before my mom. Not even close, like in the natural course of events. Keyword natural. Like, not even close. So in order for my mom to get another massive payout, she'd have to engineer a way to not only have me die, but then, like, you can't get an insurance policy on somebody, life insurance policy on somebody that's already dead, of course. So she'd have to find a way to have me, to have me killed, one, and two, have it done so quietly, in such a way that only her and her cohorts would know about it, meaning, a missing persons report wasn't generated, or a 911 call wasn't generated. You see what I'm saying here? It's very disturbing because it's alarmingly easy. Remember, I'm a single person, and I'm growing up, or I'm living in Gold Beach, Curry County, a very, very rural, isolated county, and an isolated portion of an isolated county, on the ranch, on a 1,000-acre ranch. In other words, if something happens to me, or if I go missing, whatever you want to call it, well, who's the only person that's going to be tasked with filing a missing persons report? or triggering any kind of investigation whatsoever. Well, it's going to be my mom, of course. Think about how there's not even another candidate, folks, if it's not my mom. There's not even another candidate. Think about that. So, if I disappear, or if I'm shot to death in my, living room in Pistol River, well, like who's going to call in, Nobody. And there's a whole lot of circumstances around that we don't even have time to get into. We can, but so that's the really powerful thing about it is in order to cash in on this life insurance policy, you have to keep in mind as we move forward here, it's a situation that I have to be murdered, but also quietly. And it gets that's pretty sinister, but it gets a whole lot more sinister from there. This whole thing about the value of the ranch and all that, it plays into it. Basically, a long story short here, what Tommy and the understanding that Tommy and my mom reached is something to do with, and my mom's 75 now, she will basically relinquish or sell off or whatever, the ranch or a massive portion of the ranch to whoever, Tommy and cohorts. I'm sure it wouldn't be done in anyone's name. I'm sure there's all kinds of fancy, obfuscating behind the scenes that they have planned. But that's the deal. In exchange for having me, murdered, and my mom cashing in on a really massive life insurance policy, because once again, if she knows that I'm dead, then they can start, paying these life insurance, premiums. I understand people have all kinds of other questions, which I'm going to get to in a second here. So remember, this is my mom. She has my original, birth certificate. Okay, she has that. She has my Social Security card, right? My Social Security number. She has everything under the sun of examples of my signature, from examples that she keeps. I know she did, for a fact, she keeps these on file on her computer. Examples of me signing rental contracts. Examples of me signing this contract. So she has both hard ink copies, like a stable full of those in her possession, and she also has on her computer, examples of me like signing electronically. On and on it goes, right? She also has my, address history, credit report, you name it. She has everything she needs to be me. Not that my mom would be me, but in the event that I died, well, and my mother is the one who is behind all this, which she is. Well, however it would work with getting an insurance policy, a life insurance policy, all she has to do is come up with any other person, right? And so who's to say who the real Gabe Donnelly is? I'm the real Gabe Donnelly in this instance, biological son of Lydia Donnelly, 1997 Gold Beach High School graduate, whatever you want to call it, like I am. But in the event of my death, well, who's to say, when my mom has all the credentials of my credentials, and she, and they handpick whoever to be me, so to speak, who's to say who's going to be the person that says, hey, wait a minute, that's not the real Gabe Donnelly, that's an imposter. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you can kind of see the way this works, or it would work. It's really scary. And on top of it all, you'd probably need a life. You'd probably need the a life insurance agent to be complicit in this. Unfortunately, they do. I'm trying to tread lightly here, but I can just say, right, I know from Rob, like 10 times over, I know from a lot of different sources, even my mom, that, Al Nidifer is a New York Life agent in Brookings, Oregon. So this whole scenario, he's not the guy to run all this by. Yeah, it's shocking for me too. I've known Al sort of peripherally, not as a friend or anything. He always sort of kept his distance, especially in recent years for me, which is now it makes a lot more sense. But yeah, we have a big time proof on that. But you can see how someone, or Al in this case, would agree to this, because see, it's not until that I actually, like, he's not going to be doing anything illegally or anything even like stepping out of bounds from whatever his responsibility as an insurance agent until I died, right at the point where well, you can't get caught then, because I'm the only person who's going to have whatever, dead men tell no tales type thing. And so you can see how appealing it is to somebody in those shoes, where they could be getting paid a lot of money to look the other way, or to act like, because Al would be a person, right, who would know, even though we're not like friends or anything, since we peripherally know each other from people in Brookings and all that, he would be a person that would say, wait a minute, this isn't, that's not Gabe Donnelly, or wait a minute, like where's the real Gabe, what happened here, like ask those kind of questions. So he would have to be complicit in a situation like this. So I'm not sure how to really describe it, other than hopefully I've done a good enough job on that front. So this is a really scary situation, because as the pieces start to resonate with each person, you can see how they don't feel that there's any chance of them getting caught, because either you succeed in murdering somebody, me in this case, and then again, then I won't be alive to report this or to demonstrate, see, what I was saying is true, and all that, or you don't succeed in murdering somebody, and then there's no crime that's been committed, right? And so you can always say, oh, come on, and he's really imagining things and all. It's just like what, are we fucking like 2 years old on that stuff? So anyways, that's how a rough sort of picture of how it all works with the life insurance fraud. It's really scary, and it depends on isolation, which we'll get into more here shortly, just on how the isolation is executed. Okay, so there was that whole dinner, getting back to that whole dinner where Tommy and Jonas invite me to this dinner, and I arrived there in LA, and I was really careful how I got there. I insisted on not being picked up, on driving myself. And I get there, and they're both being kind of hostile to me. And I was talking about just like what had happened in Pistol River with the home invasions, and they both like sort of cut me off and say, oh, that sounds something like like I'm just making it up or something like that. And so I knew immediately that, yikes. And simultaneously they said, oh, come on, let's get out of here and let's go talk this over elsewhere. I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Like, all in one motion, you try to like besmirch my own accounting of what happened to me with this home invasion, which was a total nightmare. It was really scary. And then say, oh, let's get out of here and let's go to a place where we'll all talk together. Like, you never hear from me again. of course. So I said, no thanks, check please, I'll find my own ride home, whatever, anything but going, to some undisclosed location with them, that would be horrifying. So there's that, and then in the ensuing days of all that, Tommy acknowledges to me that him and my mom are indeed working together, like doing like God knows, like what else could it possibly be other than something nefarious, like duh. But in that moment, they just felt so confident that they'd be able to, surround me and sort of scoop me up, that he didn't even care about disclosing, oh yeah, I'm working with your mom and that's how it is, type thing. It was really scary. It still is. And you can see with what's happened between now and then, or between then and now, I should say, you can see where that confidence comes from. So that begins a period of my life I'm really, really freaked out. We're talking 2021-ish now, just 3 years ago. And so, I'm living with my cat, Mongoose. I have a cat, Mongoose, my beloved. He's missing, by the way, horribly. We'll get into that too. So for 6 months or so, I was just living in hotels. I forget, the Quality Inn or decent hotels, and just hoping they would all blow over, hoping that they'd move on to something else. Even though at that point it had been probably 3 or 4 years of ugliness that I've had to dodge. That, there's never a convenient time to have to describe this to other people in such a way that you're hoping that they can grasp what's going on, and then also, understand that you don't need money, like I said in the beginning, or sympathy or anything like that. You need people who understand, whoa, let's make sure we provide, we let Gabe know that he's welcome to be around us, and that we'll stand by him, of course. That's what you need in this situation. That's it. And whether that means, just being, checking in with me every day, or, often, or, being in a diligent emergency contact, or, wherever I choose to live, just making sure that, we live in close quarters together. If I could rent from somebody, I'm just trying to phrase it in such a way that it's not, again, nobody gets the impression I need money or some sort of financial break. But it's that's the kind of stuff that is necessary. And that, it's that's like the kryptonite to nullify this horror, is things that, the opposite of isolation. People who care, people who are relentless in caring, people who let other people know, hey, this is somebody I really care about. This is a situation I really care about. And I'm not gonna just forget about it with the 24-hour news cycle or something like that. And so that's hard because, it's just such an unusual situation. And I know that I hate having to add all these disclaimers. Yes, I know that most people's moms are not this way. And I know you don't want to imagine this being true. Or I know that you're sorry this has happened. Whatever, it is. Yes, it's true. Yes, it sucks. No, we're not anywhere close to it being over. And I need, I think our best humanity from each individual person, and to shine through, and that could be hard to talk about and sort of, I don't know, cajole, coerce out of somebody. So that's something I'm having a really difficult time with. But so yeah, there's this period in 2022. I'm staying in these hotels. Ultimately, what happens is in Medford, it's in 2022, August. July, August. I'm in Medford, and I had the same car, a 2007 Lexus GS 300 for a long time. It was a great car, but it just sort of gave out. And I started looking around for a new car, and this is when problems really ramped up. So I ended up buying a nice car, ostensibly. This car that I'm sitting in right now. It's a 2021 Honda Accord Sport from Roseburg Honda, and yeah, like I said, July/August of July of 2022, and the sales person, her name was Alicia. She drove the car down from Roseburg to where I was staying at Medford, like that very day, which was great service. But okay, so then I decide, with that new car, to move to Boise, Idaho. Probably thinking, wait, how did you make that decision? Well, I wanted to go to a place where I didn't know anybody, and I wanted to give Uber and Lyft a shot with the new car, and that was something I wanted to try out, and so I did that. So that's August of 2022 to August of 2023, in Boise, and it starts off great, or good enough, I guess you could say, with the Uber and Lyft situation, but gradually it became more and more just frightening with, how do I say this, with people getting in the car and trying to, like, most of the rides are fine, like 95% of them, maybe 99% of them, but you give a lot of rides. So it started happening more and more that I had to call 911 in my Uber rides, because they'd create a situation where they try to get me out of the car, me, the driver, or they try to steal your phone. So here is where the typical Uber drivers would have their phone on. I'd keep my phone over here by the driver's side door, because if somebody tries to steal your phone as an Uber driver, it's tantamount to taking your life. It's not a situation where they're just trying to steal your phone, because if they steal your phone, they can do anything under the sun to you, and you'd have no way of, calling for help or emergency or communicating whether it's Uber or emergency services. And so I had some really scary incidents like that, and I tried to just shrug them off. I mean, I'm pretty mentally tough, and I always try to shrug things off as coincidental first, like even past the point of common sense, really. But it got to the point where it was just, I would sidestep these ever more creative attempts to get me out of the car and in a really scary situation. And yeah, there's more to that story, a lot more to that. But basically by 2000, my lease was up in Boise for a year. And so towards the end of it was so dangerous, that I actually took a job as a Domino's driver, because the Domino's manager offered me the job, and that's a whole other story in itself. But in August of 2023, I called my friend. I thought he was my friend. His name's Derek Lonk in Las Vegas, and another person I met in Las Vegas. unfortunately, yeah, this is a person who also knows Tommy. So I told him the situation that things are scary in Boise, and I don't. And just the whole idea, if anything happens to me, like, nobody's going to report me. Again, that dynamic's in place. Nobody's going to report me missing. And I was thinking about, whatever, coming down to Las Vegas, and 20 years prior, Derek was somebody that I would go to the gym with, lift weights with. He seemed like a pretty good guy, and never had a problem with him. And so I vetted the situation pretty well. I told him about pretty much all the things that I'm talking about in this video. I told Derek Lonk. This is not that long ago. This is in August, this past August, okay, or July, when I said, hey, I really like to live somewhere around somebody who's a friend that, for obvious reasons. Yeah. And so I told him, I said, listen, I don't know what's going on with my phone, but that's another thing about Boise, is that it seemed that a lot of the things that would happen, that they knew where I was at all times. And it's not all solved by just being an Uber driver. Like, they knew where I, in particular, was at all times, which shouldn't be the case. But I kind of just brushed it off. I didn't realize at that point what was happening, which we'll get to soon. One mystery has been solved, but it drove me bananas, like, trying to figure it out. Like, how? Yeah. And so you second guess yourself. You're thinking, like, oh, do I have a back end or backdoor enabled cell phone? Like, there's all these things that could technically be it, but then, yeah, it just seems like a how and how, yeah, when, and I get a new phone and it didn't matter. So there's that. There's all these things you're doing constantly to try to solve these mysteries, about how people seem to be all over you. So there's that going on. So I communicated that to Derek. I said, listen, I don't know what's going on my phone, but wherever I go, one thing for sure is that, I don't know how to phrase it, my enemies, or I don't have any enemies, or people who want to do me harm, aka my mom and Tommy and cohorts. They seem to know where I'm going ahead of time. Does that make sense? Probably not. But I'm just trying to describe this in a way that captures how all the while it's a mystery to me, and I'm, like, feverishly trying to solve the mystery. And yeah, that's what it's like, as opposed to somebody just, like, arbitrarily throwing oh yeah, it's just, somebody, they just know where I'm going and they're out to get me, and kind of, I'm just not that kind of person who is interested in letting the world know that, oh, they're just out to get me, and I'm being followed, but without any sort of hard evidence. I want to know how, why, who, what's the mechanism. And so I'm perfectly okay with being, I don't know, not having the answer, I guess, is the best way to put it, until I figure it out, no matter how long it takes. And it took me a long time to figure it out. But I communicated all this to Derek, and I said, dude, whatever the case is, if anyone's spoken to you ahead of time, like, don't do it. Like, the only thing it could be is my mom, is my mom and whoever is partnering with my mom, trying to get you to be, whatever, complicit or a part of my demise. And there's no way in the world, like, things that should be obvious. Like, the reason why she's doing this is not because she's got plenty of money, but because she needs money. And, your role in all this, however it was sold to you, or if it was sold to you, it's not going to work out. It's just a really hard conversation to have with somebody where you feel like, you feel pretty sure that what you're saying about, people ahead of where you go being contacted about sort of, your situation is a slam dunk, but you don't know what context they're being sold on. So I said that to Derek, and he basically said, oh yeah, he basically says, oh, don't worry about it. Like, kind of checks off that, that it's fine. But I guess it's hard to explain, but I kind of got the feeling from Derek that it was too late anyways, that he had been contacted by, most likely, whatever combination of Tommy and my mom you want to call it, but I still went anyways, because sure, I'd love to be proven wrong, like, oh, I had a bad feeling, but it turns out that, Derek's like salt of the earth guy, like, what a guy, what a friend, like, really depend on him. Like, sure, I'd love to be proven wrong on that, but also, it would, on the bad news side of things, if my worst fears have come true, like, it would certainly have been good to know in this situation, like, even telling somebody ahead of time before you got there that, listen, this is in play and it's really a big nightmare, and you shouldn't, whatever you've been sold on, it's not going to happen, and yada yada yada. If that's not enough, right, to prevent somebody from going through with something terrible, like, that is like out of the stratosphere, absurdly, like, whatever they're selling is got to be really, really tempting. Essentially a fait accompli, like, and it's my understanding that this is sold in such a way to people that, hey, it's going to happen anyways to Gabe, and so, like, you can either, sit on the sidelines and do nothing, or you can, like, profit off of it, type thing. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, I go to Las Vegas, and I arrived to Derek's place, and like, it's like immediately I recognized that, yeah, he's been gotten to. It's like, he's just not the same. He's taking all kinds of really careful steps to. What you find out when people are trying to, when people are in this situation where they're going to, whatever, they think they're going to benefit massively, financial benefit from your demise, is that, especially in my mom's case, I always call my mom a pretense creator. And so in their mind, they see a world where in a very short amount of time, you're going to be dead, and they're going to have to sort of account for or deny your, certain things that have occurred in the short time that you were around them and still alive. So just off the top of my head, for real, like, just one example. When I got there, a couple weeks into it, I just decided to pay Derek rent. Absurd. It was like $2,500 for. He had a detached, like, mobile home from his house with no power coming to it that he had to put an extension cord to. So I paid him $2,500 in a check, but he does this thing where he won't go deposit the check into his own bank in person. He won't even, like, send the check by mail himself. He's that afraid of it. He instead, when I write him a check, he fills out a Wells Fargo deposit slip and all that. He puts it in the mail as if he's going to mail it, but then he calls me, and I got a job at Domino's while I was there, and says, hey, can you after work, can you mail this one envelope? And it's like, it's the Wells Fargo. So like he's that careful about, you know, some, you know, money that showed up from me, because like, what do you think, you know? He wants to essentially reserve the right to say, I didn't know anything about that money, you know, like, you know, Gabe wrote the check and you know, whatever. I don't even know, right? But he puts it off to the side or something like that in such a way that he reserves the right to say, I don't know anything about that type of thing. I mean, yeah. And the whole time I was there, that was the only thing that, you know, only time that he did that. But it's just like little things like that come up. Yeah. And then it got really, really scary. The walls really started closing in, like, on me in that place. And like I said, I got a job at Domino's as a delivery driver, but at a certain point, they made sure that I couldn't work there anymore just by making a bunch of crap about me. Like, I really like that job because I have an easy time being nice to people. And you're delivering pizza, so it's like everyone should be happy and it shouldn't be a problem at all. But and I did a really good job, of course, but ultimately they found a reason. It was really scary. There was an incident on September 13th where they had me go to the back. They had me show up in the morning and then supposedly like delivered to this, in the middle of nowhere, to this back of this giant warehouse. And luckily it was really scary. At the pizza place, this creep named Colton showed me an aerial photo of this complex, and he goes, here, I need you to drive to this spot right here. It's like a sticker he put there, and I'm looking at this aerial photo. It looks like the Gobi Desert, like, and I'm thinking to myself, yikes. So I arrived there. It's like this school, but when I arrived there, I call, thank God, and say, hey, this is Gabe Donnelly. I'm with Domino's and just delivering like these 35 pizzas, and just want to make sure you guys are ready for all this. Just like common courtesy. It turns out that they had no idea that what pizza delivering here. We didn't order any pizza. It was like total nightmare. In other words, had I just gone to the as the manager of Domino's insisted, to the very back of this place and didn't say a word, I would have been like gunned down, no problem. And so since there wasn't an actual delivery, scheduled there at that school on that day or whatever, then nobody A is going to call and say, hey, where's our delivery? And B, when I disappeared, nobody's going to, you see what I'm saying here? I'm by myself. And so there's like stuff like that is going on constantly. And it turns out Derek is like complicit in all of it. And it's like really scary. So this leads to, Derek has this other creep living with him. Other creep. Like I'm one. No. I mean, sorry, like Derek, it turns out Derek is a creep. So like another creep in addition to him. His name ostensibly, he said, was Mikey, but yeah, he wasn't really using his real name and had different phones and all that kind of shit. Anyways, what comes to pass is, all right, this is when I first start noticing the surveillance really heavy on, okay, so Derek's house or property, it's a 1/10 of a mile driveway, like paved driveway. He's at the very end of this paved driveway, and it's a big square, maybe like 3 acres of a big concrete square. It's kind of like a ballpark. It's almost like a ballpark that's nestled in like in a downtown area, right? Where, you know, the high rises look down in there, and it's kind of like a nice view. Well, Derek's property is that ballpark. And so I noticed in my trailer, in my mobile home, which is elevated ever so slightly, I would look over into the next property, which was a church. It was a Hispanic church. And I would see these two Suburbans, and they'd have these huge antennas on them. Like massive, whatever you call it, aftermarket antennas. And they would circle around this square, the block, which included, Derek's house, like really slowly. Whenever I was there, and you could hear the, the rumble of these two Suburbans going zzz, slowly around the perimeter of it. And then, of course, because the mobile home was elevated a little bit, you could see them then come home to base. And I still wasn't getting it at that time. I thought it was the weirdest thing. What are these guys doing? They're patrolling to make sure, what though? I was able to ascertain that it was definitely, in a number of ways I was able to ascertain it was something to do with me, which is a really difficult thing to have to, you don't want that to be the case. And so I didn't understand what was happening still. I knew it was bad. I knew it wasn't good. But I thought at that point, well, if I just stay home, right, in my mobile home, that I'm protected there. It just turned out to be not true. So these what it turns out to be, folks, spoiler alert on this, I guess. Like an hour into it, spoiler alert. What the antennas were on these Suburbans, they're called cell site simulators. Simulators is a little bit of a disservice. It makes it sound like it's something supernatural or something you have to sort of believe in. But no, it's actual hardware installed on cars and trucks and anything, basically. You can have it on a car, you can have it on a van, truck, and basically the bigger the vehicle size, the bigger antenna you can get away with or whatever. And so, regardless of what cell site simulators are really scary. They're simply mini cell towers. And so if you have these things close enough to your cell phone, they essentially just trick your phone into thinking it's hooking up to a tower, right? But instead you're hooking up to the cell site simulator, which is these little vehicles that, or not little vehicles, but these variety of vehicles that can house a cell site simulator of different sizes. You can read just Google it, right? It's not as crazy or as long shot. I didn't know that much about it, obviously, but okay. So why do people, what happens when you're on a cell site simulator? It's a fucking nightmare. You don't realize it, but they're able to intercept all of everything that you do, all the sites that you go to, and they're able to see all that. That's the least of your problems, though. So if you make a phone call, they can basically transfer that call. So if you call Cash App, for example, you get an automated system and then you want to talk to customer service, just like a normal person, right? So they're able to basically, if you're on the cell site simulator network, they hear that you call Cash App, but then at a certain point, they redirect you to their spoof call center where they say that they're the, whatever, the Cash App or whoever it is you call. That's a total nightmare too, for obvious reasons. But the biggest thing is emergency services. I said biggest thing, it's bigger than anything. See, meaning you call 911, there's not many times in your life you're gonna call 911, but like when you have to call them, it's like it's probably life or death, duh. So you're expecting, whatever, the police, fire, whatever you need to be like on the way. Like that's what the whole thing's about. The idea that you would call 911 and you couldn't get through, or it was it's redirected to some other call. It's like, what a nightmare. But see, you don't even know that. You don't even know that if you're on the cell site simulator. Meaning, they know, the cell site simulator people, they know, of course, that, if they have you hemmed in on their cell site simulator network, they know that whenever you call 911, you're not going to get through to the real 911. And so what do you think happens at that point? That's all they need, right? Think about how in society, it's not just me, anybody, if anybody was in a situation where they're hemmed in on and are unable to call 911, well, you can do anything you want to that person because they're not, and if you know that they're by themselves too, I guess is the other criteria, right? And so that's what was happening in Las Vegas, is that's why they were going around and around in that circle, is that, when I was, and I would always be getting one bar, like constantly, like in the middle of Las Vegas. It's like, wow, this is really strange. Like one bar, at the most, like 2 bars. And so that was another giveaway. But things were getting scarier and scarier. And then it was January, it was Martin Luther King Day, Monday, I think it was the 15th. I was at home. It was in this trailer. You're in this mobile home at Derek's property, and I knew something wasn't right. But again, I was at home, so I figured I'd be just safe if I stayed in there with Mongoose. And that was the night. Derek always made sure to be away. He would whip up some excuse like, "Oh, I've got to work all night," and then we'd take off. And so on that night, they surrounded me. It was horrendous. Remember how I said there's no electricity out there? You would have to run a extension cord from Derek's house out there. So whenever Derek took off at like 8 o'clock at night, these guys surrounded me, and I didn't know. I knew enough that they were out there. I could hear this creep Mikey's voice sort of guiding them, and I knew there was. What they do is they took out all the cell phone chargers, okay? So like things that I would plug into the extension cords and all that. So you couldn't, like you were doomed on that front. You couldn't charge since I was in my house, I couldn't get out, interestingly. And so I couldn't charge my phone, which was on low power. They had some way of getting into all the settings on my account, which now I know, of course, is the cell site simulator working, where like the brightness was turned all the way up, the sound, which I never have on, is turned all the way up. So all kinds of modes were turned all the way up. Things designed to drain what little power I had left in my cell phone were all accented. And so I was trying to figure this out. But at a certain point, you dial 911 because you're scared, and there's people around you that are surrounding you, and you're afraid to go outside. And so, you try to dial 911, and I had like 8% on my cell phone, and I don't know what it is. Like, it's you can't get through. It's not, you just don't get through. It doesn't happen. And it's freaking terrible, man. It was really scary. These people, they know everything about you too, not just from the cell site simulators that gather information, but like they know that I'm unarmed. You know, I'm always a person that's just made a choice to be unarmed. That I always felt like, you know, you'd have to think your way out of situations. I just didn't want to rely on a gun to like get me out of a situation. I didn't want to kill anybody, even if I had the right to and all that. And so you're unarmed, and these people are taking advantage of that in the worst way. And then they take your ability to charge your cell phone away. You know, so you can't. It's not just about not, you know, being able to call 911. That's terrifying in itself when you're not getting through, and you realize, oh. And so I'd be making these calls. I don't know how they did it, or how that kind of thing works, really, obviously. But I would call, you know, another person and try to, and everything I'd get to was a voicemail. This is like 8 o'clock at night. It was just weird. So with the cell site simulators, they control everything, and they control who gets through. If you can call out, they just control everything. Like, see example of what I was saying about them having all those settings turned up on my phone, even though, yeah. So, I was it's pitch dark. That's the other thing, is that they create this environment for you. It's not just the fact that you can't charge your cell phone. Yeah, so any lights that I would plug in, they took those out too. So I guess they just waited until like I was gone earlier, and they took those things out quietly. And so it's literally pitch black in there. And you can't call 911, or you know, you try, and your cell phone is basically dwindling to the point where, yeah, you're not going to be able to call anyone else first. And I was really on my own, like I've been in a lot of my life, but there's nothing terrifying like that. I didn't know how many of them there were, but they were all very quiet. I think they kind of wait for you to scream and just like, you know, cry and all that. And I felt all those emotions. I just felt like, what can I do to protect myself? Like, what's gonna happen next? You know, are they gonna come in here? And the answer was yes, they were. Oh, I forgot to say something else terrifying. They had a guy that they put in on the inside as well. So in that trailer, in the very back, there's a area that there's no indoor plumbing, so it's technically a shower and a toilet, but I had sort of walled off that area because I wouldn't go to the bathroom there because there's no indoor plumbing or running water. And so they one of the guys they put back there in there, and so it created a situation where you couldn't just in the pitch black, totally unarmed. You couldn't just focus on keeping the people out of the front door. You had to do this thing where it was impossible. Like, you had to keep that guy out of there because you didn't know what was behind there, but I knew there was a guy there, and so you'd be in two places at once, and it was. There isn't words in the English language to explain how terrifying it is. I'm not a fucking Navy SEAL or anything like that. I'm just I'm an average guy, and an unarmed one at that, and a peaceful one. A peaceful person, really. And you can see how congruent that kind of thing is. You know, if I die in that situation, it happens quietly. Nobody reports it, and everything that I say, everything that I was saying earlier about the whole life insurance fraud and scam and how it unfolds and how it can happen, you can see how congruent it is with that. So these guys came in, and the only thing I knew that Mikey was one of them, but I didn't know anything else other than eventually they come in there, and there must have been 5 of them, but it feels like 20 of them, because you're in the dark, and I'm one person, so I don't even know what to do. Like what do you even do? You hold off these people? I had this. I used my mattress, and I put the mattress. I mean, you're desperately trying to save your life. I put my mattress up on end, and I stuffed it in front of the bathroom door, the indoor one where the one guy was, and so I used that, and then on the other end of the mattress, it sort of put me near the front door, but it wasn't enough. So I had to do this. Yeah, like I said, I was trying to keep both of them out that way, but it wasn't enough, and they overran me. And at a certain point, they're all in there, and it's pitch black, and you realize that what they're trying to do is they're trying to shoot me with one bullet, right? Because it's pitch dark, and they don't want to shoot each other, which is one of the only things I had in that situation to my advantage. Realizing that they're not going to just want to come in and just like guns ablazing. They want to get you into a situation where basically they've got you like this, and all the other one, all of them, you don't know if they have night vision goggles. You don't know what they're equipped with or not equipped with. But basically, they want to get you in a situation where one bullet will shoot you, and then that bullet is not in danger of hurting one of them. And I didn't want to die, but you don't want to die like that, like dark, not even knowing like the moment that you're gonna die. Like I was talking, this unfolded over like several, like I said, 2.5 hours that I did my best to fight, and I said to them all these things. I said, I don't want to die like this. This is not right. Like, have I done anything to bother anybody? And then I talked about Mongoose. I said, whatever happens to me, like, don't leave Mongoose, by himself, and see if you can take him to a loving family, and he doesn't deserve to just be alone and scared in an urban environment and not have someone who loves him. No matter what I said, they closed in on me. They didn't say anything back. So at a certain point, they sort of converged on me in the back room, and I kind of battled my way out of there. I had no idea how many there were, or what would happen. It was so hard. It was so I was just huffing and puffing. It was so scary. It was so scary. Not knowing anything. Ugh. And I made it. I got out of the front door so out of breath and so tired. It was just like, and I ran down to Derek's house, and Derek's gone. And I ran in. Derek's father, who's like in his 90s, was there. And you have to understand, again, I am bewildered. I should have realized that Derek's father is not a person who's going to help me. But still, I went in there and I grabbed his phone from him, and I'm like frantically trying to dial 911 from his phone, and it wouldn't work. It was like weird. It was like, I don't even know, like the Twilight Zone or some horror movie. And so I ended up calling 311. Those guys ran down, and it turns out that the guys that were in there, they're dressed up as police officers in police uniforms. you didn't know that while the first act of things were unfolding, because, like I said, it was pitch dark. But as soon as I tried to call 911. Like I said, it didn't work. At a certain point, though, they, like, really fast, like a few seconds later, they're like, "Hey, Mr. Donnelly, this is Officer so-and-so." And they actually had lights, like simulating police lights. But I knew it was only like a few seconds. So I'm thinking to myself, well, why, like, what are the police already doing here? Of course, right? And so I knew, but it didn't matter. Like, I was one person and I was just outnumbered, and they ultimately pried open the door. And if you think that what I dealt with, prior in the trailer was something, folks, they handcuffed me, right? I've never had handcuffs in my life, and like, why would anybody like handcuff me? Like, I don't have any weapons, I don't threaten anyone. Like, let me just tell you, it's really painful. Like, have those handcuffs. It's like, feels like they're just slicing open your wrist. But they handcuffed me, and they took a gun, and they held me down, and they put the gun to my head, and they would say, "Clear." And the whole time, of course, like, I'm like wrestling, like doing anything I can to get away from it, like handcuffed and being held down. And I just couldn't, just the idea of my life ending that way, having my brains like blown out on Derek, apparently the biggest creep's ever floor, while his dad like roots it on, and whoever these fucking guys are making it happen. It was like just surreal. Yeah, nothing could be more terrifying. And I just kept on. You accidentally find out all these things. I don't know anything about guns. So you find out that, I guess, when somebody's like trying to blow your head off or blow the gun works in such a way that, like, you have to be still for a certain amount of time, like 1 second, like literally 1 second, for the bullet to go off. And if it's not, if you're squirming around a little bit, it resets. Apparently, I don't know if that's true. Oh, whatever the story was. I didn't know that going in. I just sort of, as I'm like flopping around, I'm just trying to survive like one more time. And this goes on for more than any other time. I want to use this phrase. It goes on for seemingly forever. And every time you're not sure if this is going to be the time that your head's blown off. I don't know how many times. It must be 30, 40 times. I don't know. The whole time I'm screaming my head off, like, help, police, call 911. But they're dressed as police officers, which is disturbing in itself. And you get the... How do you even, like, describe this stuff to people without it seeming like it's too much to handle, right? It's too much for people to, like, how could that be true, right? Like, in America, to somebody who's peaceful. Folks, all of it's true, and, like, what do you even do about it, So, I just kept on screaming my head off, and I don't know what it was that got them to stop eventually. They did this thing. It was so painful. They eventually got annoyed with me, because I guess every time they were about to shoot it, I would go like that. I'd reset the clock. They did this thing where they handcuff, where they like raise your arms are behind you, obviously. They raised your arms back. I felt like they were tearing my arms off. It was the most painful thing ever in the world. I never really want to like think about it ever again. Oh my God, it was terrible. So painful. And then they do this thing where they held me down my ankles, like, so you're like kind of like laying on your side. You're handcuffed and you're laying on your side, and then one guy is on, like, laying on your ankles, and another guy, oh god, they did this thing where they don't even, like, after a certain amount of failures with a gun up here, they did another thing where the guy's behind you and you can't see him, right? And he's like about to fire the gun. Oh my god, it just gets worse and worse. And that was so, like, I'm just flopping around, like, every bit of energy, and your muscles are going, like, I can feel them cramping up. The ones that really, the hamstrings, you know, your hand, like, yeah, just cramping miserably. And I'm so close to like muscular failure. And every bit of adrenaline you have is being, you know, sort of released, I guess. But that thing about somebody standing behind you, and then the first time it was so close that the guy said, they're like laughing about it. They say, oh, I thought for sure we had it that time. I'm just like, oh my god. I can't go like that, right? But I'm realizing, oh my god, they're behind me now, and I've got to, like, sort of just instead of timing it so that you're doing it at the moment you think the bullet is about to come in, that now you've got to do it, like, all the time. I don't know how. I think what ended up happening is when I couldn't get a hold of 911, I had dialed 311 as well, and I think that was the right move, because a call kept on calling back 311, and ultimately they sent in somebody to give me 2 shots here, one here, and it turned out to be ketamine, because I woke up at the hospital and the nurses said that you had taken ketamine. I'd never heard of it. So I know, but yeah, somebody had given me ketamine. It's the only time in my life that I had blacked out, in terms of, I didn't know how I got to the hospital. And so that was January 15th. Today is March 18th, so that was only 2 months ago. And so yeah, Derek Long, like, he knows about this. I mean, there are names, as we go along here, there are names, people who know about these, who are part of this, and people that we can, if there's an investigation, we can question. And then it got worse from there. When I got out of the hospital, it was basically, to make a long story short, I went to, at that point you're thinking, okay, I still didn't, at that moment I still didn't understand the whole cell site simulator thing. I still didn't know. But I said, okay, well, let's go out to Jacksonville, Florida, because I'm thinking, okay, if I can get away from this area geographically, like, are these people going to follow me out to Jacksonville? I didn't know if the answer was yes or no, but at that point, all you care about is getting away from that situation, and you'll do anything you'll try anything, right? And so I called this guy, Ira and Jody, who I knew from my Jacksonville days, and I just said, dude, I don't even want to tell you what I've been through. And so a repeat performance of the Derek Long situation in Las Vegas. But basically, I just wanted to have a destination to go to, and, you know, hey, maybe I'll come out to Jacksonville, you know, get a job out there. And so Ira, who admittedly is kind of known as a little bit of a sleazy operator, but just there's a big difference between a sleazy operator and somebody who's going to, like, sign off on somebody being murdered, like, or look the other way. Like, that's still, after everything that I've been through, that's still a really big leap to take. So yeah, I went out to Jacksonville, and Ira said, "Oh, I'll talk to the wife, to Jody," and she said, "Okay, you've got 2 weeks, basically, like when I come out there, to stay with them for 2 weeks to kind of get my footing," which is fine. They have a huge house, a big guest room, so I ostensibly appreciated that. And he said something about, like, Jody just retired, so she's having her retirement party on the 17th, so this is like February 3rd or February 1st, something like that, I don't know. So I start heading out there basically at the end of January, and I arrived there, I think, at the very beginning of February, and it's not immediately clear that something's wrong, unlike the situation with Derek. The other person I talked to is Curtis Dvorak, who I also knew from the Jacksonville days. And he says, on the way out there, I met, audio messaged him. And the first thing he does is he messages me back and he says, "Oh yeah, just so you know, yeah, me and Al Nidifer, remember him? Me and Al Nidifer, we've been keeping in contact," which is a funny thing to sort of volunteer, given the fact they're on opposite coasts. "Yeah, we've been, doing push-ups and pull-ups and all that. We've just been, communicating all the time our workout habits or whatever it is." But it's just the way he sort of volunteered that him and Al keep in touch, which put me on notice, which immediately, like I said, well, it wasn't obvious from Ira's end initially. What it was obvious from Curtis's end, that, okay, wow, I'm heading into a situation that they, meaning my mom, Tommy, and those two entities have already reached out to people in Jacksonville that I'd be associating with and made their pitch, so to speak. Very simple. Okay. Wow, she's pretty. Sorry, it never ends. So, driving out to Jacksonville, yeah. I think for the moment I'm going to end the video here and then just talk about what happened in Jacksonville, then Savannah, Georgia, and now in Washington, D.C. in a third video, because it's pretty awful, but yeah.